There's other Facebook videos going on too. So
Sucking up all the bandwidth. Take two. New York Knicks.
unreal Facebook.
Okay.
You know, you're screwing
Here
up.
we go.
You're screwing up the flow. You know.
I don't understand what happened, but for those of you who just were able to check us out, we got shut down on Facebook for a good minute and a half, but we're back. Back. Better than ever.
Unbelievable.
Hey, man, I wanted to ask you about...
All right, we'll pick this back up. So to recap, people are shitheads if they defend people on a sexual harassment claim based on political affiliation, which is a lot of people out there. Anyway, take two.
Oh, my God.
Go ahead.
So I saw this meme, and I wanted to read it and hear what you thought about it. It's a coaching meme on Facebook. Parents, your kids are in high school now. You shouldn't message me to ask what time we are leaving for a game or what time practice is. If they don't know, let them miss it. They'll start paying attention. So that's a meme I saw on one of the sports Facebook feeds I follow, and I wanted to hear how you thought about that, Nick, because I know that you have usually been very much in favor of, letting kids sink or swim on their own, generally, but take it in, listen to this meme, see what you get out of this. You shouldn't message the coach as a parent to ask what time the team is leaving or what time of practice is or when the games are. If your kid doesn't know, let them miss it. They'll start paying attention. What's your thought?
100% agree. I couldn't agree more. I am a firm believer when it comes to sports. There's responsibility involved, right? And you shouldn't text the coach and ask when practice is when they're in high school. You shouldn't pack their things up for them. You shouldn't put their stuff in and out of the car. You shouldn't carry their bag ever from a tournament or a game. Ever. Ever. I don't care how old they are. Coach pitch minor league. No. Pack your shit up. Carry your bag to the car. You want to know why? Because the kids that are acting like knuckleheads in the parking lot throwing rocks are throwing rocks because they're not carrying their bag back to the car. Mom's got, 2 lawn chairs, an umbrella, a cooler, and your freaking bag yelling at you to stop throwing rocks in the parking lot. Do not carry. I'm going to give you people some advice for if you have younger kids. Do not carry your kid's bag. Ever. They won't know where things are. They'll never know where their glove is. They'll lose their glove. My son lost, he forgot his cup once. One time. Never happened again. Never happened again. You want to know why? Because I never packed his stuff. I never carried his bag. He always knew where everything was, to a point where he got everything together ahead of time. Abby, we don't carry her bag. We don't do any of that. You know who the kids that seem to have the most trouble, that are behavioral issues, forget things, whining, crying, yelling at their parents, yelling at their coach? Inevitably, I can tell you this. It's not a coincidence that if you look in the parking lot, mom or dad's carrying their bag.
I think those are all good points. I was looking at this from a bit of a different perspective, and I was looking at it as parent to coach. So when I was a kid in high school playing sports, obviously that was before the internet, before cell phones. We had pagers, I think, at that point.
Had hair,
yeah, a lot of it. And I can still remember going to the first practice after tryouts. If you made the team, you'd go and see the board, and if your board had the name on it, you made the team. And then the coach would give you a ditto, the old-fashioned ditto sheet. And on that ditto sheet was the very basic plan. Practices Monday to Wednesday, they were 4:30 to 6:30. Here's your team schedule for your games. Bring it home. Give it to your parents. So all that means is the parents were given that communication to know what time the games are, when the practices are, what the protocol was for pick your kid up at this spot after games, leave your kid here before we leave on the bus. So, and you know where that wound up in my house? It wound up with a magnet on my refrigerator. So I always knew, my parents always knew, this is where you've got to be and when. And I can remember also as a kid, after each game, my parents or somebody would handwrite the score next to the game on the calendar, or cross it off, so we knew what was next. It was just our way of organization at that point. So here I am now, so many years later, and when I saw this meme, I'm like, wait a minute, why can't I ask the coach, hey, what time are practices? When is my kid supposed to be? Where are the games? When are the games? How do I get a schedule? Not every parent, even in 2021, knows to go to the school website and look up the schedule. They just might not know. So,
but you do.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. I know where the games are. I know what the schedule says. But I don't know when the practices start. I don't know where they end. But my kid would have to tell me.
Exactly.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with the coach giving the kids some type of information and go, here's the sheet. Take it home. Give it to your parents. Your parents don't have to be on any text thread with me, but I do think it's perfectly fair for an adult who's watching children, supervising kids, to have some degree of communication with the parents. And as an example...
Well, communication about what time practice is, or communication because there's different types of communication.
The very basic starts with, hey, practices are Monday through Friday, 4:30 to 6. Pick up your kids here, pick them up there. That's it. This is what you need to know. I mean, I just don't think it's asking for so much to do it. And I'm not saying this meme that I saw on Facebook is demonstrative that all coaches don't provide their team, their kids with the sheet to give to their parents. But when I saw this, I just said, oh, well, maybe if this coach doesn't want to be asked, give it out. Because, and what I know...
Well, how do you know? Well, that's not saying that this guy never gave it out.
Of course not. It just says don't ask him. Don't ask the coach what time practices are
don't ask
or when
the
the games
coach.
are. Why can't I ask the coach what time the games are?
Because it's the kid's responsibility. It's his team. He's playing. And by the way, it's never just one time, right? I've done a lot of coaching. Obviously not scholastic, but I've done a lot of coaching where it's never just one time. It's one time for this and then another time for that. And it's all stuff that the kid should know or the kid already knows or the kid's responsibility to find out when and where practice is. Right? It's the kid's responsibility to not forget his glove and not have to rely on mom or dad to know where his glove is or to bring that equipment. And I'm sorry, I take a hardline stance, a very hardline stance on this, so it just doesn't create any problems down the road.
Have you noticed that in club ball that the coaches on the club private pay team, that there are many who will have that first meeting with the parents? They'll stand up there and say, hey, welcome. Here's what we expect from your kids. Here's the schedule. These are the practice plans. We expect your children, your kids, to be responsible and on time. And, they give you that speech, but at least they're giving you that communication. So I guess I'm in no way disagreeing with you. I guess my question for you would be this. Do you think that the coaches of these school teams should have that first initial communication to the parents for any reason whatsoever, so as to set a tone, provide the information at all? Or do you think it should just be never?
I'm fine with them not doing it if they don't want to. Because at the end of the day, it's my kid's responsibility to come to me and set it all up.
Have you noticed
this is a whole thing? But this is a whole... See...
Have you noticed a different feeling or obligation in the pay-to-play programs, your club ball programs? Have you experienced something different there, where those coaches and those parents do expect those coaches to talk to them?
I'll tell you, this is how my meeting is for every single season, regardless of if it's rec or if it's travel.
The fact that you have a meeting proves my point, that there's a meeting.
Yeah, there's a meeting, but I don't need... My son can't go, oh, I don't know when practice is today, They might have changed the time. Like, he's got to find that out. Like, that's his job. Like, that's his thing. Nobody in life, especially when you're in high school now, nobody's going to keep telling you that the schedule's changed. Normally it might be posted somewhere at your job, but you have to be able to let kids figure things out and even maybe fail at some time so they learn a lesson. One of the biggest problems with education in this country and with this is we're not allowing our kids to fail. Right? Failure is so bad, right? Oh, your teacher's on you because you failed. Your parents are on you because you failed. When any successful person knows that failure, it's not if you fail, it's how you pick yourself back up and you keep trying. To make failure such a bad thing, it's counterproductive to growth. It's counterproductive to growth of that person. And so is constantly reaching out to your coach to find out when practice is in high school.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with what you're saying.
Right? I mean,
Especially when you say constantly.
I'll go back to carry your bag. You know how many kids, I was at a showcase for 16 and 17-year-old players, PBR, New York State games. Jake was in them. I saw a mom carrying a bag. Do you know what happens if a college coach in the parking lot sees your mom carrying your bag?
Yeah, but that kid broke his ankle.
No, he didn't.
And he was suffering from compartment syndrome.
Yeah. You're off the list, man. They watch everything. Those coaches park in the same parking lots. I've been at things and I've spoken to coaches. I know coaches. They say, look, if you talk to your dad,
like a shithead.
If you talk to your dad like a shithead, I know a guy who St. John's came to watch him pitch. He saw the way he talked to his dad through the fence before the game. He didn't even want to stay and watch him pitch. He left.
That's a good story.
He left. So, we have to stop with this baby. And if the kid misses practice, he misses practice. And then you know what? He's got to then tell the coach why. Right? Don't let mommy or daddy call and go, oh, well, he didn't know when practice was. No, absolutely not. And we'll move on from this. But my meeting real quick, because I brought it up.
Yeah.
My meeting is, if you have any questions or any issues, if you're concerned about why little Johnny or little Sally's not playing or why they were taken out of the game, little Johnny or little Sally's going to know why they're out of the game because I'm always going to communicate with the player when little Sally was taken out of the game, when the next practice is, if it was disciplinary or not. Maybe it was just to get some other kids in. Maybe they're sitting the bench because I made a mistake, which I've done before. And I've admitted to it to the kid and went up to the parent. But I tell parents every single meeting, before you come up to ask me any of those types of questions that are around, ask little Johnny or little Sally first, because little Johnny or little Sally are going to know the answers to that question. Now, if you don't like the answer that little Sally or Johnny gets you, then obviously you can come ask me the question. But about playing time and stuff like that and all those certain things, the kid's going to know. I'm going to tell them. Now, maybe not all coaches do that. I'm not better than anybody else. I'm just saying that that's communicated, right? Here's my expectations for you, for the kid. Here's the expectations for the parent. And then here's what you can expect from me as a coach.
Did either of your kids try out for fall sports that started today in the middle of winter?
Nope.
Let's talk about that for a second. Because one of your kids is in middle school, right? Right?
Yeah.
And historically, middle school kids get to try and play up if they meet certain criteria here in the district. I'm just trying to make a transition into what's going on right now in our local district, and that is fall sports in the middle of winter. Mm-hmm. You're aware of that, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
At this point, with the Kingston School District?
Just generally, it's a statewide issue.
Look,
State allowed fall sports to play in the middle of winter. How do you feel about that?
I'm fine with it to an extent, right? If Kingston is going to be so far behind even having tryouts or getting things done, like when did they start? When are they supposed to start?
Fall sports started today, March 1st.
Where is Kingston at right now? Are they supposed to start tryouts today?
Fall sports tryouts started today.
But we don't even have a meeting we don't even know if they're going to have these sports, right?
That's correct. The school board is voting on it on March 3rd to have fall sports in the middle of winter, and the kids are trying out today for their fall sports to have them in the middle of winter, and they'll be done presumably within a month or so because spring sports are scheduled to start assuming they are voted, approved April 19th. So I just thought it was strange. I was trying to get my arms around why were fall sports even proposed by the state and approved by the state when fall sports was missed. I don't get it. And I was speaking to some people throughout the week who had really strong feelings on one side or the other. And it was interesting. There were some folks who believed, hey, look, fall sports didn't get played. The season was missed. Chalk it up to experience. Move on. And when fall comes in September 2022, no, 2021.
2021. Yeah.
They'll get their fall sports back. Other folks felt, look, let's get these kids a season. It's important. It's meaningful for all the social reasons to get their season in. So it was interesting. And
I'm on two sides of this. I got to be honest.
Me
I'm on
too.
two sides of this.
I can
because
see both ways.
I want the kids to play. As far as a timeline, I think with a lot of these winners, with a lot of these fall sports, I mean, I think it just might be too late, especially for Kingston, because I just don't think they really have it together, right? Because they tabled the vote. Didn't they table this vote from before to after the sports were already supposed to start?
Yeah, the first issue is who in the world decided to squeeze in fall sports for a do-over? Whoever said you need a do-over? I had some folks telling me, what's next? Participation awards? What's next? No cuts for these teams? What's next? Having oversized rosters for these teams? Which, by the way, you could say is a fantastic thing. No cuts, oversized rosters.
No cuts, oversized rosters.
Be overall inclusive.
But there's a pandemic, so your fear is spread, but you want to have oversized rosters going to travel to Middletown.
I wish I could put a column up to have a comparison column and a checklist, because I find it also interesting. And again, I'm not going to tell you my opinion, but I found these opinions really interesting. A do-over. I'm like, since when are people so philanthropic or so charitable in giving someone a do-over? They missed their time, yet give them a do-over. B, be over-inclusive. Don't cut people. Have a larger roster. The kids need it for their mental health. These kids who've been stuck inside need to be social. But that has to be juxtaposed against the CDC guidelines, which say you have to be socially distanced. Mm-hmm. You should not take in a high roster, right? And then also, you're squeezing in more kids to be observed by only a few coaches over a shorter amount of time, and yet you have to ensure their safety. And not just for pandemic COVID issues, but for the sports, the game itself. Take football, for example. You have to get these kids into football shape. You have to make sure they're capable and stretched and healthy and physically fit and have endurance. And you could probably fill in the blank for any sport, whether that be soccer or girls volleyball, right? And and so there are those folks who say, how are you going to squeeze this in so quickly? And then how much practice did they get? And then when's the first game, if there's going to be a first game? And what happens if a kid gets hurt?
Here's my take. I don't see the need to be equally fair to everybody, because honestly, it's not real world, right? That's not real world. I do want the kids to play. Don't get me wrong. I would love for them to be playing basketball. The district should have been out ahead of this a little bit sooner, because now this is gonna because they won't vote on for spring sports until they'll table that, right? So because I want to see what happens with the fall sports. So I'm telling you, this is just going to be a whole cluster F as we move forward. I think.
Hey, what's our phone number? Will anyone call and give us their comments? 845-366-2095. 845-366-2095. You just don't want to hear us talk about what other people might believe. Let's hear what you believe.
I think the issue that I have is it's not a COVID issue. It's a safety issue with football. And I know this might not make some people happy, but I think to rush this season in, you are running the risk of injury, and potentially serious injury when it comes to football. And you need practice. You need camps, right? You need drills. A lot of these kids don't really know how to hit, right? They really don't. Technically, a lot of them have flaws in their hitting. They need drills. They need contact. So what are you doing? We're going to squeeze it down to the minimum amount of practices that you need by the state, which by the way, is not enough. So
what has it been reduced to, if you know? I heard 6.
I heard from 10 to 6. 10's not enough to have 10 practices because what has happened in recent years with all the CTE and all the concussions, even in the pros in college and now in high school, they've limited, right? They've limited the amount that you can have contact, that you can have practice in pads. So now we're limiting practice in pads, practice time, drill time, preparation, conditioning for a sport that's very taxing on the body. And then what's going to happen is you're going to squeeze games in the 4-day state minimum requirement rest time to play football. So now, not only that, now you have no practice time and less recovery time from a game on Friday. And we know a lot of NFL injuries with concussions and certain things started way back when these kids were playing Pop Warner because of the equipment wasn't the right size and they didn't know how to hit and they didn't do a lot of these things. And we're going to rush these kids into playing a sport that's a very high risk sport anyway. That I'm more on the no side because I think some people don't really realize how that works. Right? The NFL is doing studies and there's independent studies being done with the increase in injuries this year in the NFL. And they're trying to find if it was because of limited camps and no OTAs and no preseason. I just think your body needs recovery time from football. You need to be conditioned. You need to go through drills. You need to have contact practices. You need to have a lot of things. And I know some of these kids have been working out on the off season or doing things on their own, but they haven't been in pads hitting. They haven't been practicing and running in pads. They haven't done any of that kind of stuff. Football is the one sport where if I had a board vote, I may say no to football. I would say yes to anything else. You want to play basketball? You want to do all those things? Football, I think, is just a different animal. Thoughts, Kenny?
I think it applies to all the sports that are out there right now, and there aren't that many. And it's the soccer because you can tear an ACL. You know, you're playing soccer.
But an ACL is a non-contact injury, right? So yeah, that's not something you can. That's not a conditioning issue. That's you run out, you make a cut.
Yeah, you make the cut wrong. Your body's not conditioned. Your legs aren't strengthened. You're only practicing 6 times. Plus, the field conditions outside in the winter are horrendous. I don't know that they're ever going to be able to get out on the field. It's been snowing, and now, we're going to have some 40-degree weather, but it's going to get crappy. It's going to be muddy. It's going to be bad. Now, who cares? Mud is cool. Go play in the mud. Go play in the grass. No one cares about the field conditions
much mud.
Until you tear an ACL trying to, move left and right. It's going to be interesting, really interesting. And meanwhile, the conversation is nice to have, but there's a vote March 3rd, and it all goes back to what is the recommendation from the school's medical director, Dr. Walter Woodley, and I have not seen or heard any public comment from the district's medical director. So that will be interesting. And, by the way, there are still other dimensions to this or dynamics to this issue, which is what's up with the modified kids, the 7th and 8th graders. Historically, there are 7th or 8th graders that want to try and play up into the high school. And is that changed? Yes, I think so. I don't know that these middle school kids have the same opportunities this season because of the pandemic and the administrative, the narrow aspect of the administration to squeeze them in. So they might be squeezed out. And, some folks who have kids that are 8th graders that were looking to play up are now going to be affected by that. And there have been some sports where the 8th graders were allowed to play up. And now how are you going to compare that to these sports where they're not? So you're going to have these arbitrary decisions made, or at least the perception of that. So you're not going to be able to make everyone happy all the time.
They're late. Kingston is late to the game. The board is late to the game on this. And now, is this going to affect the spring sports? People will say no. But it will, because you couldn't even get the vote together to get the fall sports in right now. And is it going to look? And I'm sure, and I'll just put this in full disclosure.
When is it never full disclosure, Nicholas? You're always full disclosure.
My son plays baseball. So I don't want it to think that I don't want these sports because I just want spring sports because it's baseball.
But you told me that before we started.
What?
that you just want spring sports and you want these winter sports just to go away.
I didn't say that.
You didn't, did you? Well, that makes for good radio.
Damn, fake news.
Fake news. That makes for interesting
Right.
comments.
Cuomo already shut us down once when I ranted about Cuomo, and they
That's
cut our
right.
Facebook feed.
Cut our Facebook feed. Cancel culture. Cancel culture.
I'm tagging Cuomo on the
We
replay.
have been victims of cancel culture right here.
I'm a victim.
They're looking out for us.
I'm a victim. I don't know why they had the table and just pass the vote on. Nothing was going to change between then and now. Make a decision.
I disagree.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Well, while you're getting that connected, I thought it was a good idea they just voted on the basketball, wrestling, and cheerleading last month because it was a no vote. So if they were forced to vote last month on everything, they would have voted no. So I'm glad they tabled
I guess.
this for then, which is on the 3rd.
All right. Who's this? You're on the air.
Yeah, I want to talk about transgender people playing sports. What do you think about that?
What do I think about transgender people playing sports?
Well, generally that's okay.
Yeah.
I think they could play sports. Are you
like-
asking? Are
Who's
you
on the-
asking where they should?
When
Who's
you
on
have a
the phone?
transgender, when you have a boy who becomes a girl in high school, and then the girl who used to be a boy is competing against girls and winning, what's your feeling on that? That's been a hot topic.
What's your feeling? Our feeling.
I want to know what you're feeling.
Oh, we'll tell you ours, or at least we'll tell you what we think people have told us. So what do we think about
Yeah. What do you? What do
either
you think about it?
transgender, a boy playing on a girl's team? We did a show on this.
Yeah, I'll
3
tell you.
weeks ago.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now. Where the issue becomes is how much of a competitive advantage does the biological male have, and it's going to be a lot because you have. We talked about this before. Larger lungs, larger heart, bigger bone density. You're able to pump more oxygen through your blood, which basically gives you that makes you bigger and stronger as far as being able to do different things. That's what Lance Armstrong was doing in the Tour de France. They were going in and doping and replacing their blood between stages with higher oxygenated blood. And people were saying that Lance Armstrong, who's already a superior athlete, was flying through the mountain stage like an animal, like nothing they've ever seen before.
What kind of animal?
A crazy one.
Crazy animal. First of all,
So I think
it's a great question.
Yes, thank you for the
I want to
question.
thank the listener for asking that question. It's a great question, and Nick, that was a great answer because I think you were trying whether what you said was true or not. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor of medicine, neither are you.
I'm not a doctor, but I did some research.
So, assuming everything that you said is true, your point I think is what's most important, which is you were just looking to have a level playing field, right? All you wanted was a level playing field between the players.
Yeah.
And that's what really matters. And so if the transgender athlete comes in with an uneven playing field, that's not fair. I think that's all you were trying to say. If it can be done fairly, there wouldn't be a problem with it.
But it's
if
basically
not
impossible.
fair,
It's impossible to
that
do it
there lies the rub. If it can't be done fairly, then it ain't fair, and it's not a level playing field, and it's basically cheating.
Yeah.
If it can't be done fairly, and if what you said is true, it can't be done fairly.
But I don't think you're going to have, I don't think in scholastic sports, you're going to have, for the most part, you're not going to have people fake being transgender to play a female sport as a male, right?
It's not going to be an abundant issue. Even in Connecticut, where it got national news and where the government actually came in with a brief to the Connecticut, litigation with a position on it, and then I think retracted it. The issue is how abundant is it really going to be?
Yeah.
You're talking about one incident in Connecticut that came to light with one athlete or two athletes. That doesn't make it right. But I think the point is how abundant is it really going to be?
There was one college. Oh man,
sorry.
I forgot the name. Jeez, that was loud. I turned your microphone off, but
Thank
I
you.
go back on.
All good.
There was a collegiate athlete who had some years of eligibility that actually played college basketball as a male, helped them win, and then transgendered, and then at 30 some years old went back and played female college basketball and helped them win some sort of championship or something like that. And the pictures of it were like, wow, she was big, tall, strong, muscular. I think that's a one-off. I think it's a one-off.
Look, we had a listener. The comments are Amazing. Keep the comments coming in. Nick, rhetorically, we had a comment from someone who simply asked, would it make it more fair if the athlete kept tripping over his penis? I can't believe that was a question. Awesome question. And could it level the playing field? It could slow down the transgender athlete.
I guess so.
Biologically born as a boy. Wow.
Salute you.
Incredible question. I'll if you ask the question, we will put it on the table. This is an adult show, I guess. Just turned into one. But hey, we're not afraid to bring those questions to the forefront.
So do you think, so what about the modified? You were talking about modified, middle school modified. Do you think they should be allowed to play up? Or are they being, what's the deal with that? You seem to know more about this than I do.
Yeah, I heard that there were some sports where you have 7th and 8th grade kids playing varsity sports, or I should say high school sports, and now you have other teams starting where they're not giving those kids an opportunity to play varsity sports. So what you have is an arbitrary decision, and the district needs to be able to demonstrate why it's not arbitrary.
Like, why is that decision made? Why can't those kids come up and play?
Right, and we don't know the answers to all those questions.
Because what is it? If it's a COVID issue, then you're basically saying you shouldn't play sports at all, right? So if an 8th grader can't go and play varsity because of COVID, that makes no sense, right?
Correct.
If it's a safety issue, because of performance or whatever, they have to go through that test. So if that's a concern, then the kid shouldn't be playing anyway. So what is it? I don't know why that rule has to change.
I kind of thought it was an administrative issue. Remember, if you want to play up in the city of Kingston, the school district, you have to go through an administrative process of an interview. Okay, you have to be recommended by an administrative person like the gym teacher or your coach or a school teacher. You then have to have a physical examination to make sure you're physically mature enough by your health care provider. Mm-hmm. So there are all those issues. So maybe it was just a situation that the school district understood and realized they couldn't get that all done by that period of time. It was just too much to squeeze in.
But why is modified? Anna asked, why is modified not playing anyway if other levels are playing? What's the reasoning for that? Transportation?
I would only guess.
Why is modified not playing any schedule?
Nobody's been told why. I'm guessing as much as anyone else can guess that it's about resources. Okay.
Oh, that's a caller right there, my friend.
Awesome.
I'll take it. You're on the air.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Is that Nick?
Yeah, it's Nick.
Who's on the phone?
Who's on the phone?
Hi, Nick.
First name?
It's Kendra.
Oh, first time, long time.
What's going on?
What's going on?
So listen, here's my thing, right? So I'm just gonna, because I feel like Kenny's been poking the elephant in the room, right? With like the modified thing, the spring versus fall versus winter, right? So I'm just gonna say, if you look at sports, right? So yeah, there were kids that were 7th and 8th graders, not necessarily in Kingston, but other districts that were allowed to play JV and varsity, but they were invited. It wasn't just like, hey, all these young kids could just go try out. They had to be asked, and they had to pass a physical fitness test, right? Yeah. So that was the rules in the past. So a lot of people might not know that, right? So coming in, they're looking at it like it's not fair because other kids got this opportunity. Why isn't my kid? Well, these kids got this opportunity because they were exceptional, or someone spoke up for them and said, hey, this kid has the talent, has the ability, has the maturity level. So besides all those tests and things, you also needed a physical test to say that you had a certain maturity level, because you can't necessarily have an immature, let's just say 7th grader, riding on buses with 18-year-olds if they're not at that same level, right? So that's one thing that, like, sometimes people they speak about things that they don't know about. And so
like Kenny,
that needs to be said.
Yeah, I speak a lot of stuff I don't know about.
His maturity level? Is that where you're going with that?
I'm just trying to get issues out there.
If there's anybody that does that, it's me.
No, I totally, so that I don't really, I feel sad for the kids that have that talent level and ability that they're going to miss that opportunity for sure, right? But that, I'm just telling you the science and the history behind that and I can understand why that's not happening right now. So that's one thing. Wait.
No, go ahead. No,
We weren't
no,
gonna
who's
hang up
running
on
this
you.
show?
Let's go.
Is Ken?
Let's
Is
go.
you now the
So you
producer?
guys seem to be. Have you met me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Listen.
Nope, go ahead.
But you guys keep talking about, right? So like winter sports, right? So right now the focus in my head is like the fall sports. I know that I've made a lot of enemies lately, and some of my dearest friends and I we refuse to discuss the topic anymore because I just feel so strongly on it. But if you look at the calendar year, last year, right? So you're looking at the season of fall, winter, and spring last year for the school calendar year, right? Fall sports and winter sports had every single practice, had every single game that was on their schedule unless, I don't know, a rain delay outside or something, I don't know. Spring sports did not get one iota. I can tell you that my kids who both play spring sports and play fall sports, so I'm not the person standing here going, so I'm only saying this because my kids only play spring. My daughter has played field hockey. She has played volleyball for 3 years. They played fall sports, right? So it's not me standing here going, only spring matters, right? Like Nick, you said your son plays baseball, and you can probably feel my pain.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here saying these kids last year had like days of tryouts, were told they made these teams, never even got a practice in, never got a game in, and yet somehow here we are back at, okay, let's worry about everyone else. Whereas I think it's great to worry about all the kids, but when you look at the totality of the calendar year and you look at last year versus this year, I think the focus should be on the kids that didn't get anything last year. I feel very strongly about it. I might be wrong. Not saying I'm always right. I could be wrong.
I think that your
I just
point is well
think
taken.
like-
There are a lot of folks that share that opinion, and there are a lot of folks that don't. When you look at what's happened to the spring sports, spring lost its entire season last year, right? As you explained, March 13th.
In its entirety.
Right, with the exception of the tryouts for softball, for lacrosse, for baseball, on or about March 13th, they were shut down.
So
never
they
to
got
play
what?
again.
A week
So
out of being around each
So they
other,
got
right?
nothing. They got nothing, not a zilch, nil. And now,
Yep.
and the same thing happened. Oh, by the way, and what were they given as a result? Did anybody give them a participation award or a do-over, or say they're going to give something to them?
Oh, people talk like
People began. I'm doing what you did, Nick. Oh,
I know.
people going to start giving me something, or I need something because I lost something. I want my pound of flesh. Look, there are a lot of people that were like, "Listen, you lost it. So sad. Too bad. Move on. You lost your season. You didn't get to play softball
and
or
I'm
lacrosse."
so done with that because I don't agree with that. So I
No.
feel like saying so sad, too bad to them who missed their fall. But
I think that's.
being
I
the
can
bigger
understand
person
that.
and just trying to diplomatically speak, the way that it's spoken.
Yeah,
You know,
and
we
also
can sit here and say too bad, so sad thing for you. But
Right. So
nobody's
now what do you
saying
do
that
about the
right now. Now it's
basketball?
Like,
What's
let's find a way.
What about basketball? Basketball didn't have its season in Kingston, but it did in the state. Other schools had it, so I guess you don't have to give the basketball team a
It did
do-over.
last year in its calendar year. It had a full, just like fall. It's no different. It had a full calendar year last season.
That's true, and then it lost it this season.
did.
So that's. I understand your point.
It's no
And-
different. It's no different than fall. It's
So,
the
what's-
only one that got penalized was spring.
And so what you're saying
So
is
how
spring
about
is
you
getting its.
take care of spring?
Spring is getting screwed twice. That's what you're saying.
Spring is taking it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're gonna get
Over.
it. They're gonna get a season. It's just I don't trust Kingston to have
It's
it
going
all.
to be a truncated season.
Well, I don't even
So
think-
here's
yeah.
my next question. Wait, so listen. Here's my next question, right? So you guys were talking about how you need to work out prior to all these seasons, right? So yeah, that happens for all these travel kids who play year round and stuff. But not everybody that plays high school sports is a travel kid, right? So they don't work out year round. Typically, for spring sports, they have winter workouts, and they work out in the field house, at the track, whatever, for weeks prior to the season even starting, right? So there's my preface to my next comment. How about now, if we start these fall sports now, right? these kids are going to play for however many weeks, and then spring sports start, right? I would assume, I don't know for a fact, that spring sports would probably get a couple practices in before their first game starts,
At
which
least
is
6.
like mid.
At least 6.
Right. Okay. Wait. So now these kids that play both fall and spring sports, right? So this kid that's now playing fall sports motors through their fall season, doesn't practice with the spring team, and jumps right onto the spring team, never having attended a practice.
Well, let me
Do
ask.
they play?
I don't.
Yes.
I'm under the impression that
I think
they have
that's
to
a
have
pretty
6
valid
practices.
question.
Nick, I'm under the impression that a student has to have a minimum amount of practices on
Okay.
the team, and I'm also under the impression that the spring season. I could be wrong. The goal was to have the fall season end before the spring season began. But are you under the impression, Kendra, that the tail end of the fall
I'm not
season?
under any impression because there's been zero communication.
I think
Well,
I.
under
That's
no
well, I mean, I think that is an issue.
I read a bunch of comments where people raised what Kendra had raised, which is, what if the tail end of the fall season overlaps with the beginning of the spring season? What's supposed to happen? I was under the impression that the fall season was supposed to end so that your kid could end their fall season of soccer or football and then go right into tryout for a spring sport. Maybe we'll find that out at the board meeting on March 3rd. Maybe that will be an issue,
Right.
or at least discussed.
Right. Which is
But-
after the fact where you've already started tryouts of something that may or may not exist. So
Right. But what is the deal? What's the big
Yeah.
deal? Some folks would say these kids are young, they're resilient, they're physically fit, they just came off of playing soccer or football or volleyball in the fall, and they played for 4 days a week. They're barely going to probably get 4 games in. And then listen, okay, it's Monday. Go try out for lacrosse or baseball or whatever. They're in good shape. What's the problem?
well, it's not about the shape. It's about how about you're practicing the fundamental skills of being on that team. How about gameplay? How about what to do in first and third situations and what to do? They're missing practices of what makes them be a team.
Okay, so that goes
You
back
know?
to the first issue. We
my-
don't. That
my
becomes an
needs?
issue of whether they actually are going to miss practice. So I don't know the answer. If they're going to miss 6 practices, they're
Yeah,
not going
I
to get to
can't
play a
imagine
game.
how they're going to let them finish the season, and then they're going to have 2 weeks of practice before they even start the season. I mean, the schedule is published for our section. It's out there.
I don't know when the first game is for spring, but whatever it is, there's going to be at least
Well,
6
there's no
practices.
they're going to be able to. They'll probably extend the spring season. That's what I think may happen,
They're
simply because there's no
extending the
champions.
games
There's no
yes.
state championships for spring sports in New York.
Right, they are
Which again,
extending.
I think is crazy, but I think they did that.
Which it goes back to my whole situation of why didn't you let spring just have its spring? And that's not a Kingston thing. That's the whole section. That's everybody. You know what I
It's the
mean?
state. And that's in part because they
Obviously,
knew they were
Kingston just made
canceling
the
the
decision on their
state
own.
championships. They were canceling the divisionals and the sectional,
Right.
the state championships, which saves them at least 2 weeks. So they can, as you guys call it, truncated or expanded. That means you can play spring sports into June without worrying about the divisionals or the sectional or the states. So some folks might say that your spring kids are going to get a full season. They're going to get they're going to get April through May, all of May, and maybe into June.
But you're hoping. See,
No,
that's
I-
the thing. You're hoping they get a full spring season and that they extend it, where you shouldn't really have to.
It's a strong chance of a possible maybe.
Look, the thing that scares the shit out of me, honestly, is football. Is rushing these kids through a football season to rushing games, schedule games that's not on the normal rest, just the state minimum allowable. I think is just it makes me nervous if I had a child playing football and about the preparation, because football is different than soccer. It's different than lacrosse. I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying the activities that need to be done in football, just safety wise, are a lot different than those other sports. Makes me nervous.
Hey, thanks for the
Thanks,
phone call.
Kendra.
I hear you.
Awesome.
All right, you guys.
See ya.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, oh man. So she posted something about also earlier on that how colleges have an inflated roster, right? Because what happened was, because of COVID, they've allowed kids to have another year of eligibility. So a lot of kids are going back with another year of eligibility. That affects the classes coming in, right? That affects the recruits coming in, because I know a lot of kids that are really good baseball players that Jake played with last year and the year before, who were older than him. I think some of them had, ended up taking offers from schools that they probably normally wouldn't have went to in a normal scenario, because they probably would have been able to go to a better college, as far as not academically, an academically better college. I'm not saying that, but athletically. And it's hurting kids. I mean, D1, they still can't come out and scout, right? D3 can, D2 can, but the period for coming and watching kids has been extended, I think, through June. So, my son is sending emails and he's communicating with coaches and he's sending out his schedule, and hopefully they can watch live streams, and some of the D2 schools and D3 schools will be able to watch at, Diamond Nation, things like that. We're playing in the Boston Open and all these different things. And, my daughter has softball tournaments, and, this would have been her first year for modified. I don't know what's, there's no modified sports. She misses the first year of modified, but just like I told my son with his, for missing last year, I said, look, you still have time, right? And that's what I would say to anybody that's upset with the modified sports and not being able to play modified, or even sometimes maybe even not being able to play up, is, look, it's just not your time yet, right? Like you have more time. You have plenty of opportunity. Don't let it discourage you. I just don't see why and how Kingston is so far behind every other school with a lot of with these issues.
We didn't even discuss the fact that other schools are playing and Kingston did not. I think it's a fair question.
Other schools where?
Take the
well, Poughkeepsie's playing, right? Because VJ
right,
was on, and he,
right.
and
we don't
he's
have
the one.
Explanation. We don't have an explanation as to why these other large districts and even smaller districts were able to pull it off and play sports, and yet the Kingston City School District was not able to pull it off. I don't understand, and that makes people really mad, because they just want it. They want equality. They want a level playing field. They want what other people have, and for the taxes they've paid, they want the benefits. These are what people are telling me throughout the week as we were teasing for this podcast. And if I were to say to them, look, it's a safety issue. The school district is trying to be safe. The response you'll get is, well, explain how the other districts are doing it safely. Why aren't we? It's a really good question. It's a fair question. And I don't know if it's been answered. I say that because I looked at the school board for what public comments they've made. I don't see an answer to that question. I look to the newspaper, to the what is supposed to be where we can get our news, and I don't see an answer to that question. And people want to know. They don't have the answer. We've been going for over an hour, Nick.
Yeah.
What do you say?
And Nadine, I would like to see yeah, Nadine, I would love for kids to be able to voice their opinions. They also deserve answers. I agree. Andrea Campbell, school districts closer than Poughkeepsie are playing. Yes, they are. It's.
Listen, we should have an early podcast after the third. It could be celebratory, or it could be really sad. Or you can do a rant.
No, I'll rant. You can go to, like I said before, you can go to bed.
You could do a dueling rant. As the school board, a dueling rant means as the school board is posting.
Oh my God!
Live on YouTube, you could be having it right here, and you could be talking about it as it's on behind you. That'd be pretty cool. At least I think so. All right, man, take us.
I don't have. I know.
It's past my bedtime.
I know.
It's a work night.
8:13.
Let's go.
8:13. Look, he's ready to just hit the.
Yeah, man.
He's ready to hit the stop button.
You got to stay on schedule.
Can you believe Cuomo?
Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Stay on schedule, man.
Oh my God. Oh, I didn't know.
We didn't get to talk.
I didn't know. I didn't know that. Did you see the video of him telling the woman to eat the sausage? You should eat the whole sausage, and he gets her a sausage, and then she's saying, at a dinner.
What?
Yeah, and she's like, I don't think I should eat this sausage in front of you, and eat this sausage in front of all these cameras. Yeah. And he's like, and then he calls somebody over, and he's like, get her a sausage. And the guy walks over to the plate and hands her a whole sausage, and she goes and sit next to him. And he goes, that's a lot of sausage.
What's wrong with that? That's just trying to add levity and banter. That's what he said on Sunday.
But now it's funny how you see things in hindsight, and people are going to say, well, that's inappropriate.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, man. Well, anyway, look, hold on, Kenny. We got to do this the right way. All right? I want to thank the callers. I want to thank everybody that commented. I would like to thank Mike Raposa for always commenting and listening. I'd like to thank, who else do we want to thank? Well, I thank the callers. Random guy who I don't know who he was.
Random guy with the
Thanks for
transgender
calling.
comment.
Transgender comment guy.
That was awesome.
And Kendra. And if anybody...
Want to thank Rob.
Oh, yeah, Jake has
Siegel.
to go hit. That's right, up in Saugerties. I got to take him to go hit.
Thank you, Rob, for the comment.
Yeah. Talk to everybody soon.